What's up, everyone? Welcome to a new episode of Moving with Life. It is Wednesday, and so with that, I've thought about okay, what am I going to talk about? But also, it's Wednesday, and at least the way I was raised, and for what it's worth, you can take this however you want. But I was raised with, at the minimum, recognizing and giving some time to learn about Jesus Christ, to learn about the gospel, to learn the story, to learn, and essentially, getting into the Word and giving that dedication, giving that time to doing that. And over time, we've gotten away from that, and now, blatantly, schools just override, minimal to no homework on Wednesdays so that kids can go, let's say, to CCD, and obviously, COVID has changed a lot of those things, and the world has evolved. Nonetheless, the principle of getting into the Word, that'll be something that I will say, if you can get something out of it, I hope you do. But it's just as selfish for me as well, so that I can kind of reel myself back. It's like, okay, we're Wednesday, we're halfway through the work week, through the school week, whatever that looks like. Usually my weekends look pretty busy nowadays, so like it's the middle of the, that's why I'm specifying it's the middle of the work week, middle of the school week, because there's still obviously 4 more days left of the week. All that being said, one of the themes, one of the bigger things that I don't know how long it'll last necessarily, as far as focusing on the theme of faith, tying it with fear. But for today, that's what I want to kind of get into, is faith versus fear. But for me, how trust ties into that. I remember having a conversation a few years ago. I think it was even before deployment. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but it was a few years ago, and it might have even been Gonzo that I was having a conversation with. At least that's who comes to mind. But the question that was asked to me was, how do you know, like, how to trust that book, that person? How do you know what to trust of that book, of that person? And it's obviously stuck with me since, at least two, three, probably 3 years ago, more or less, if not longer. Because it's true. In general, why should you trust anybody? Why should you believe anything you read or see? And so, over these last year, now few years, it's like it does tie into, it is an element of having faith, because the sense of having faith, you can't always see it. It's not always a visible, tangible human thing that we um, might want it to be, whatever that may be. I do believe that sometimes it's your gut feel. It's your gut feeling, and if you don't trust your gut feeling, sometimes there's a default to that. Sometimes people trust their gut feeling, and it's like, you're way off. I wish it weren't the case, but you're not hitting the mark. But nonetheless, you have to, again. This is my, I guess this is my argument. It's like, you have to believe in something, even if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in the Bible, if you don't believe in the Word, you believe in something. Something makes you say yes to that decision. Something makes you move forward and move on to the next step of whatever it is you're working on, whatever it is you're doing. One thing I've gotten into just recently, because I've heard I'll say various fathers, but different fathers that I listen to, whether it's their homilies on YouTube or even at church. Every once in a while, they'll talk about the catechism um, of the Catholic Church. And I didn't know quite what it was. I've heard of the term catechism, and for me, I always related it to CCD, which in essence is being taught what the word means, what faith means, what the church means, the job of a bishop, the belief of marriage and the sacrament of marriage and what that means. Finally, when me and Gina went, we were shopping for Bibles, but in that I was like, I wonder if there's catechisms. I've only heard of them. I didn't know what they look like, how they existed. Was it only something that those involved in the church, in a from a from a not parishioner, because that would be us, but from a like priest standpoint or a deacon standpoint, is that only something they can obtain? Obviously, that's not the case. One of the pieces that it's literally just a end of a sentence. It says, "By faith, man freely commits his entire self to God." By faith, man freely commits. That's giving you that free will to decide. Because what if I've learned anything of of the many things, but something that has been exponential is I believe there's free will because God wants you to choose Him. And for my personal life and my personal experience and what I've gathered, when I got to that point, it still relies into the trust factor. You have to trust, and people, even people that are supposed to do good, do bad things, and that's where people bring the more argument of like, well, if people, if God wants good for everyone, or if God intends good or means good, then why does disease exist and why do all these things exist? Because for those of us who don't have those ailments and those troubles and those times of hardship, and if your life is so good and so easy and you're not worried about a single thing in your life, whatever it may be, He still wants you to turn to Him. Because if you look at the full data, I will argue, if you look at the full data, people live longer, more diseases have been cured. For the sake, but not too political, some things are human made. So it's like, so then what does that say? When a human being can make something bad. Then I can tie in wanting control. I like control in the sense of, what's my schedule? What do I have to do? Give me check boxes and things to do, so I can just go down the list and check them off. But even then, when you reach that uncertainty point, you've mitigated all the risk you can. You've checked to make sure and double checked and rechecked that, hey, my plan looks pretty good. You still have to make the decision to go. You still have to make the decision to, like, okay, I'm gonna something super simple. Yes, I'm gonna write this book. Yes, I'm gonna teach this subject. Yes, I'm gonna go learn this so I can do it, i.e., plumbing, electrical. And you don't even have time. The theological point of this. My point is that when you have that little self doubt, or when you have the opposite, when you're like, I'm ready, and your gut saying, we're good, let's go do this thing, and the fear gets pushed away. That certainty comes from somewhere. That rationale comes from somewhere, and sometimes things are irrational. Again, tying into that could be the argument. That's the counter argument as to why bad things happen to the earth, is because my life's pretty good. My friends' lives are pretty good. We have a lot of freedoms. Things are pretty weird right now, but regardless, I'm doing this. I'm gonna, knock on wood, I'm gonna post this, and you're gonna watch this, and we're gonna maybe have a conversation in the future. But it's pretty good, especially over here in the United States compared to a lot of other places. I just saw some stuff from a little outlet, an Instagram. I'll call it an Instagram outlet that I saw, and bad people doing bad things. And so even in the midst of that, and for your own individual life, it comes down to trust, and that is tied into faith. Everyone has their own journey. Everyone gets their points of view from whatever experience they've been given. And even with all that, you have to trust. Because if you don't, then we can get into like pessimism and nihilism and what's the point anyways. But at least in my life, working in hospitals, having experience in hospitals, trauma centers, talking to my friends that are paramedics, EMTs, my friends that are, obviously being paramilitary, but the ones that are still in the military, all the law enforcement officers, the Leos out there, the law enforcement officers, fire. It's like, I don't know. I even in I will say the short time that I've been around doing things beyond high school, going to college and learning how to live, it becomes easier and easier as the years go by. To say like, no, yeah, this it's hard. It's becoming harder and harder to sway me away from, man. Let's get into word today. Oh, hey, did you hear about this? I learned this. Maybe, hey, actually, let me help you with this. Here, let me help you move this box. Making a decision to do that. There's another line here that I have in the script. It says, "Faith doesn't cancel out reason; it elevates it." I was like, "Ooh, that's such a good line." Because some things don't make sense, but if you have a path that you're going down, and you know right from wrong, and you know what is right and what is wrong, at least in the majority context, when you have that trust, when you have that faith of like, I know what is the right thing to do. I know what is the better thing to do. Then it just builds and it compounds. So in closing, I'll read this as well. We're at the end for today. You may never have all the answers, but you can have peace in knowing you're walking with the right intention. Choose trust, choose peace, and keep moving with life.